how have you adapted your traditional and classical or folk techniques in Bollywood or not? I'm looking for through performance philosophy, through steps and sequences, through costumes, through music, through performances, as in artists and audience expectations. I mean, I'll keep going through it as well. So, um, in general, just talk a little bit about adaptation of traditional and classical in Bollywood.
The adaptation of traditional classical forms in Bollywood has come to me really because of the briefs that I receive. For example, a typical example would be I remember having to choreograph a whole show for the final awards of the best chef in a certain region. I can't remember at the moment where, but I remember it was taking place in a very sort of large golf course, and in the conference center in the golf course there was a huge range of mixed audience, and at the end of the competition there was this gala performance, and the brief very much was that it needs to be quite mixed. The whole show needs to be very mixed. It needs to show different parts of India, and even to include perhaps some music from Bangladesh, and so that brief really allowed me to then use my classical forms and Bollywood to bring together a whole show which would suit everyone of every taste. And I remember having my students in that particular show, my four sort of more advanced students, and they had a learning experience as well to find out that at times you need to leave the Kathak training behind and make sure the acting part comes in front, because if you're depicting a village girl having a bit of a comical adventure with the village boy, at that point, that acting is what takes more precedence than the Kathak training and the Kathak form and so on.
So, did you ever make a show, for example, which used Bollywood, but you used your training of Kathak, and how did you set about creating the show? In terms of costumes and so in terms of putting together a melange of songs, steps, did you meet the artist or the audience expectations? So if you talk a little bit about that.
I remember one very good example of using my Kathak training in a sort of Bollywood dance setting was when a very renowned singer, Manna De, actually attended London a few years ago. There was a very big gala performance in Alexandra Palace, and I remember being asked very much specifically to choreograph a dance performance in conjunction with his live singing, and that was obviously a matter of huge privilege to be able to dance in the same performance as a renowned singer as Manna De was absolutely amazing and rather frightening, I must say, especially in a huge venue like Alexandra Palace. And then when I got down to work and actually saw which songs of his I was using and how I'd be using them, I could see that the Bollywood style, which basically means a little bit more flamboyant, it needs to be much more visual. Subtlety doesn't often sort of lend itself to Bollywood because it's about large audiences, it's about big screens, and in a country like India, lots of things are happening at the same time. So to grab attention, it needs to be quite clear and quite defined in its style and look. So then I realized that my sort of typical Kathak costume would not do the job. It would be a good base to start off with, and my typical Kathak choreography would also not do the job. Again, it would be a good base to start off with. So then I needed to actually work out where would be a good place to add a bit of flamboyance, perhaps add extra turns, perhaps add more exaggerated expression work, which generally in Kathak it doesn't really take place unless it's a comical piece of dance that we're doing. And it worked out beautifully because the singer also had very much a say in how the dance was taking place. So I think it's a collaboration of the dancer and the director's own decision making, and then you need to actually meet with the accompanying singer's approval as well as the producers who are sort of funding the whole project.
So if you started having classes now, how would you market your classes now?
Well, funny, to be thinking about starting classes now, because I've been thinking about starting classes for the last 2 years, but because of being a solo performer and also juggling work, it hasn't come about. But it just seems everything's happening this year, and it's very highly likely that I will be starting classes this year. My old students still keep ringing, and they're very much wanting to start classes again. And now, obviously, they have finished all of their school exams, and they feel that they're in a better place to be ready. And my marketing policy would be very much to do it in a way that the classes accessibility is at as highest level as possible. So apart from sort of, you know, making sure that all the local schools and the local libraries would know, I would want to make sure that lots of parts of the community don't actually have access to going to dance classes, or do not think that they're actually good enough to go to dance classes. My concern would be to actually access those children. Often you hear of inner city projects where they're doing really great work, but you don't really hear of inner city projects doing great work with Kathak. And I do wonder why that is, because Kathak being so flexible and being so malleable as a dance form, and especially because it can be used through the Bollywood form, and Bollywood being so very universal, I mean, I don't think there is a single community probably globally who haven't heard the word Bollywood. They might not be able to describe it, but they've certainly heard it. And I do wonder why less privileged children aren't accessing, you know, good times, fun, dance through this form.
In the past, when you have marketed your classes, or if other people have marketed your classes, what do you feel has been negative, and what do you feel has been positive as a result of that marketing?
In the past, when I've actually taught dance classes, the marketing has seemed to be really haphazard. And I think that was because of my lack of experience. I didn't realize that to market a dance class, it's better to actually start off with a plan of action, to really think like a project manager, rather than just basically going around to as many people as possible and saying there's a dance class starting, if you know of anyone, please let them know. And I think that's actually counterproductive, to let people on a sort of one-to-one basis know, and then they seem to sort of spread the word. Because then what happens is people don't actually realize what the dance class consists of. It's, in this day and age, it's so much better to have a free website even. I mean, websites can be done on MySpace for free these days, which is fantastic. And then perhaps if the word of mouth can be used, oh, this is the MySpace website, have a look if you're interested, then they don't get these mixed messages of what's being taught in the class. You know, if it's a Kathak class, then they know it's a Kathak class. And especially when marketing a class, I think it's very important to not get carried away by making it commercial, making it popular. So a typical example would be you know, having a very big poster with sort of big letters saying classes of Bollywood dancing, and naturally people will come in their droves. But if the teacher's intention is actually to teach a classical dance form and supplement it with Bollywood, then I don't think it's perfectly fair to put on the poster Bollywood classes.
How do you feel you have contributed to the development of Indian dance in the UK through your teaching?
Through my teaching, I've tried to contribute to the development of Indian dance in the UK. Luckily, I've had a lot of support. I've worked with some very good organisations, and I'm linked now with the cultural wing of the Indian High Commission. And I find that hopefully in 20 years' time, all the work won't have been dissipated away. I hope that at least a handful of people will remember, and if not, then at least the documentation that's now hopefully will stay for a while through digital formatting and so on, will stay, and it will have some sort of heritage value of itself. Because all of the work ultimately isn't really to sort of kind of celebrate the fact that I'm a performer and I'm on stage. I think I'm much more concerned about giving people that inner world, that ability to access this wonderful secret world that should not be so secret, of dancing and poetry and music and traditions. So I hope that that my work with FIPA, my work with dance schools like Chandam, and also the Bhavan Centre, where I actually learned and completed my masters in Kathak. I hope all of that work, and also all of the workshops that I've done throughout the years. I still do workshops now, but not as much as I used to. I hope all of that will actually stay, and even if one child per workshop is actually affected by it in a good way, I think that's heritage enough, you know.